Today, we become legends.
While some of Smite's items have genuinely cool effects and depth, most don't. These are my suggestions to replace some of those boring pile of stats items with some more synergistic and interesting item choices in the form of one new item for each conquest role. And if you're a non-conquest player, you can pretty much take this as one item for each class as well. These may extend to multiple classes in terms of viability, as I don't intend them to be hard class locked, I hate that shit, but I made it a goal from the start to design an item with every class in mind. Next, I wanted a theme for these items, much like the Arthurian item tree that was added a while back where they were themed around using your ultimate and being Arthurian of course. For my theme, I decided to go with self-sacrifice, items that bring a lot to the table but at a cost of something else. This could be stat reductions in some areas and massive boosts in others, it could be overcapped CDR at the cost of not being able to basic attack, etc. Of course, the closest thing we have in the game at the moment to a self-sacrifice item is Sacrificial Shroud, which boosts your damage output at the cost of health per ability cast in a similar way to Thanatos. There are also the masks, which in my opinion are a worse way of doing risk versus reward items compared to Sacrificial Shroud, since all they do is increase one stat massively and decrease another one massively. Not super interesting in my opinion, and given how one of them has already been removed from the game and the others see very sporadic play, I think Hi-Rez might agree on that one. After creating all these items and looking back, I think making them tier 4s / glyphs would be the best way forward, since they offer very powerful but expensive benefits, and you should probably be limited to just one of these in your build since they're so game changing. Plus, I really feel like there just isn't enough variety in glyph items at the moment, and you kinda just get the one for your class / role and that's it because there's only 5 of them. These would add more variety. As always, I am not a game designer, and the balance of these items is likely way off, especially given the nature of sacrifice items needing to give great rewards to justify the sacrifice, but the idea of the items is what I wanted to showcase here. Any numbers that I use are considered carefully, but I'm mostly just there for display purposes. But first, a word from our sponsor, the epic RPG on mobile and PC that you can play your way. That's right, it's Raid. Choose from over 600 unique champions and fight in the PvP arena, PvE dungeons, campaign battles, unique bosses and more. I've been playing Raid for a while now, and the main thing that always draws me back is the champion variety. There's always a new fighting style to explore and new champions being added. Here are 3 of my favourites so far. Aethos, the legendary high elf champion, is a huge AoE burst damage dealer that can wipe the floor with multiple enemies at once while lowering their defenses. Pretty cool. And to pair with all that AoE damage, we have Rotos, who despite looking like and Cleaner had a baby, he has some of the most crazy single target damage in the game and is great for boss clearing. And finally, to support and buff that squad, we have Necret the Great, who while insanely useful on the battlefield, just looks really good in my opinion and catches my eye in terms of visual design. Very sinister. Ultimately, I'm a PvP gamer at heart, and Raid satisfies that itch perfectly with its PvP arenas. Assemble a powerful and synergistic team, then send it to war against another player's party to see who comes out on top. What's not to love? There's a ton happening in Raid this month with special events every single day and a huge Path of Light event for the summer solstice where you can choose your path and be rewarded accordingly. The Diliana event is also going on where you can get a brand new legendary champion and other great rewards if you log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and July 20th. Use promo code MyDiliana to get 50 XP brews to max your legendary hero to level 50 as well as tons of silver. The promo code is available from May 23rd to July 20th.
But I'm not done yet!
The gifts just keep coming. New players can hit the description or scan the QR code on screen to get a free champion, Verges, even more silver, XP boosts and more. Find these rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only, and I will catch you guys in the raid. But without further ado, let's jump in with my first new item for Smite. So first up for the ADC role / hunter class, we have Pinaka the Unblockable Bow. Building as a tier 4 glyph item from Ichival, this will cost 3,050 gold in total and come with 50 physical power, 10% penetration and 15% lifesteal on the base stats. But the passive is really where this item gets interesting. Your basic attacks are replaced with beams of light that become hit, scan and damage all enemies in their path. Your power contribution towards basic attacks is doubled, but your attack speed is halved. The beams can also proc item effects on every enemy the beam hits and can crit as well. So this item is one of the more wacky ones on the list, and it really does change the way you play your god. It pretty much turns your standard pew pew hunter basic attacks into much slower but higher damage beams of light that pass through all enemies. The name is taken from Hindu mythology, as Pinaka is Shiva's bow and it is said that arrows fired from it could not be intercepted, which fits great for the piercing basic attacks idea I've gone for here. This of course allows for really insane wave clear in a similar style to Izanami or Rama's Astral Arrows, but I intend all of these items to be late game luxury pickups, not laning phase rush items, and they will be priced accordingly, and come with a sacrifice of reduced stats or effects in other areas to gain those benefits. In this case, the minus 50% attack speed drop just for buying this. You gotta make your shots count if you're buying Pinaka on a Hunter. The increased power contribution to basic attacks means they do 200% of your scaling per hit, so in general, I think this item will be most useful on ability-based Hunters or hybrid Hunters like Ula or Chiron. That way they can build their standard power and pen for ability damage and pick up Pinaka late game to utilize that insane power stat for some really high damage, precise basic attacks that pierce enemies. Also, for anyone wondering, yes, the 1/3 AoE lifesteal coefficient would apply to your basic attacks after buying this item. One final note, I designed these items to not be class locked, but Pinaka is one that just doesn't work on melee gods basically, and so it would have to be class locked to hunters in a similar way that the sword tree is class locked away from them currently. The rest of these items though won't be hard class locked in the same way, it was just this one that wouldn't really work being on any other class than like a hunter or a mage really. Next up, we're heading over to the solo lane with Shield of Aeneas. Building from Shifter's Shield and costing 2950 gold total, this item comes with 50 physical power and 50 of each protections on the base stats. With a passive that striking an enemy god first from out of combat converts half your total protections into power for 10 seconds, and being struck first from out of combat by an enemy god converts half of your power into protections for 10 seconds. This will have an internal cooldown of 60 seconds and you'll have to reset out of combat to proc it again. So this is a more simple one in terms of how it actually works. If you're on the offensive and hit the enemy team before they hit you, you get a huge power boost for 10 seconds to go ham on their backline, but if you're getting engaged on by the enemy and they hit you first, you get a huge protections boost for 10 seconds to stay alive while they're diving you. After that, your stats return to normal until the cooldown resets and you leave combat. I also specified enemy god to make sure minions and camps don't trigger this passive for low value. It in theory should only go off when you're directly fighting enemy gods, unless they like play around it and poke you with Bologna 3 or something like that. But that's the general skill test of the item. The flexibility is something I really wanted to build into a solo lane focused item, since solos are often the most flexible in terms of their builds and playstyle. This item offers you that in a big way, but at a big cost. You might gain a 300 power boost for 10 seconds, but equally you lose 300 protections for those 10 seconds, and vice versa, so you'll have to play smart to use this item well. It would also come with a very clear indicator like the character glowing red or blue depending on which way the item procced, so enemies and you can easily identify if you got prots or power. As mentioned at the start of the video, these items aren't intended to be hard class locked, more soft locked where they're designed for a certain role or class, but might see play elsewhere. With the Shield of Aeneas being one of the most flexible and least punishing designs on this list, I can imagine it might see play outside of solo and warriors. However, I feel solo laners are the perfect kind of hybrid playstyle that would make an item like this work. They build some power and some prots, and they can basically sacrifice some of one to maximize the other for a short period of time. Whereas other classes are more likely to just build all damage or all tank, where this item is less useful but still funny. Imagine a full support Bacchus engaging with max protections and just gaining 400 power out of nowhere, but also being shreddable as fuck during that time. I think this item could bring some really hype and unique moments to Smite, and it's one of the favourites of my designs that I've made. Though that could just be because I'm a solo main that wants to be able to one-shot the backline, who knows. Moving on to the mid lane / mage item, the Sword of FREYR. This one builds from Chronos Pendant as a tier 4 glyph and costs 3300 gold in total, comes with 100 magical power, 10% attack speed and 10% CDR on the base stats. With a passive that your basic attacks are replaced by the Sword of FREYR which floats by your side. Each basic attack will pulse the sword, slowing nearby enemies and storing energy inside it. At 5 stacks, the sword becomes empowered, causing your next basic attack to copy your most recently used basic ability and fire it from the sword at 50% effectiveness. This copied ability deals physical damage. So while I said the hunter item was the most crazy in terms of the effect, this one is probably the most crazy in terms of balance. This could well be completely broken or absolute garbage, and admittedly there isn't too much you can do to balance it besides requiring more stacks to charge the sword, or maybe doing a lower percentage of the ability's damage and CC instead of a straight up double cast. However, as with other items, there is a sacrifice you pay to get this powerful effect, and in this case it's that you literally can't basic attack at all, they just charge the sword. Mages / mid laners are definitely the prime target for this item since they don't use basic attacks anywhere near as much as other classes and their abilities are great. But I could definitely see this flexing into the support role as well for double CC chains, and the cost of not basic attacking is fairly irrelevant to a support guardian in the late game. While you own this item, an indicator would show up on your most recently used basic ability at all times. Call me a nukie, cause we're going into the jungle with Skofnong. Building directly from Stonecutting Sword as a tier 4 glyph, this item costs 2800 gold in total and comes with 50 power and 10% movement speed on the base stats. That may seem weak, but the passive gains a tailored effect for each unique enemy god you've killed up to 5. Guardians provide 100 health, Hunters provide 10% attack speed, Mages provide 10% cooldown reduction, Warriors provide 20 of each protections, and Assassins provide 10% penetration. So this one is a bit of a snowball item, but junglers tend to have those more than other classes, see Bloodforge. Skofnung comes with mediocre base stats for the cost, but a very powerful passive that gives a strong benefit for each unique enemy god you've killed. Skofnung does change a lot in what it offers depending on which gods are in the current match, but I think that's fine given how long Morrigan has been in the game with a very similar situation on her ultimate. If the game has 3 Hunters in it, like seemingly all of my games recently, you're going to get 30% attack speed from Skofnung, provided you kill all 3 of the Hunter players uniquely. Normal stat caps still apply, so against 5 Assassins you can't get 50% pen because 40% is the cap, same with cooldown reduction from Mages. I feel this item is unique enough without being too complicated or wordy, and it will be pretty fast to calculate the total stats given by Skofnung in any given game since they're all easy multiples. You can also do some maximizing with this item in terms of hunting down the specific target you want to get the stats that you need, and the stats that it gives might seem pretty nutty, but keep in mind this item is an expensive late game luxury and requires you to land a killing blow on every enemy god uniquely at least once to get max value, so I believe the inflated stats are justified on this one. Plus, the base stats for the cost are just terrible and it really needs a few kills to start paying for itself. This one is the least self-sacrificey of all the items, but the idea is the sacrifice is the risk you take when picking this up since it's very weak initially but can become strong over the course of the game. You might want to grab this early to stack it up, but it is expensive and so it may be better to wait until late game and get all the stacks in one big team fight. And finally, last but not least, we have the support item, the Shield Svalin. Building from Mail of Renewal as a glyph with a total cost of 3000 gold, this item comes with 300 HP, 10% cooldown reduction, and 20 of each protections on the base stats, with a passive that after using your ultimate ability, you gain a large health shield based on your max HP that dissipates to nearby allies over time. Any shield left after 5 seconds will begin to heal HP equal to its size. The shield is 50% of your max health and dissipates by 5% per second to nearby allies and can affect multiple allies at once, draining the shield faster. If no allies are present, the shield will just decay over time at the normal rate. So yes, another pretty crazy item with multiple uses. The main aim of this one is to give supports a defensive tool to help heal their allies a bit better. The health shield is obviously huge initially, but decays by 5% per second. Each ally in a 55 unit range will drain the shield faster, having all 4 teammates nearby will drain the shield at 20% per second, and give each ally in range 5% max HP and shield per second, until the shield is depleted entirely. If no allies are nearby, the shield just decays over time at the normal rate. After 5 seconds, any remaining shield on allies will begin to heal over time. This allows for a 25% heal if the item is used completely alone, since 25% will decay off over 5 seconds and the rest will start healing you. Fully spread out among all other allies, you're looking at 12.5% heal/shield for each of them. Using your ult at the start of the fight to engage or peel an enemy engage and shielding up your whole team feels very support to me, and while this item might see play elsewhere, looking at you solo laners, I think supports would make the best use of it. While the sustain in solo sounds very nice, you're fighting alone and so half the shield is immediately useless as it will just decay off you. But that's all I got for 5 new items, 1 for each role in Smite. These were pretty crazy, so if you liked any of the designs, do let me know in the comments down below. If you have your own ideas, don't hesitate to add them to the discussion either. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.